I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ms. Beth, would you please call roll?
Moore, present. Wagner,
Here.
Walker,
Yes.
Murphy,
Yes, present.
Shields is absent.
We have a quorum.
So moved.
Support. Have a Ms. Walker.
Thank you, Mayor. I did have a couple of questions. Page 17. About midway down, BCLH Management LLC Contract Services Downtown Office for a total of about $13,200.
I'm only smiling because I had the exact same question again.
I'm sure we had others.
That is rent for our downtown office, our marketing director. We are utilizing space above Chow Bella, which is, I think it's 409 East Lake. We're renting space above there, so that is for the year, rent for the year through June 30, 24.
Thanks.
Walker.
Thanks, Mayor. And then on page 25. Towards the bottom of page 25, EF Wilkinson and Sons, Inc. contracted services for a total of $351,597.
EF Wilkinson is the general contractor for the Bridge Street project.
Okay.
So that is a disbursement payment for that project.
Thank you. That's it for me, Mayor.
Any other questions? I go to Ms. Beck for a roll.
Moore, aye. Wagner,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Murphy.
Yes. Motion passes 4-0.
And I will add very quickly, because this EF Wilkinson was a new contractor for us, so we were a little concerned, but I asked Mike how it was going with them, and they are very pleased with their work, how they followed through. So we're excited to be able to add another contractor to our potential list of vendors and bidders going forward. So
And Mayor, can you remind me, Shane, where they are located? EF Wilkinson's located out of? Is it like Rogers City or something?
yeah, I think that's right. Sheboygan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving right along. This is public comment time. This is your opportunity to come up to the mic and talk to the council, not to the audience, but talk to council about a matter which we feel is very important. And full name, full address.
Okay, Mitchell and his name is Mitchell.
Attorney.
Oh. There you go.
Did you hear the first part? Kate Marshall, 1015 East Mitchell. So just so you know why I'm here again, when I was here at the last meeting, I had anticipated that you would have a second reading of the proposed PUD ordinance tonight, and I was going to make these comments as appropriate, but since you are not doing it tonight, and since I'm going to be away in August, I thought it's important for me to share what I know of the little bit of history surrounding PUDs with you. So here we go. For the record, dear Mayor and City Council, further thoughts on proposed rezoning of 1420 Standish Avenue to a PUD. On June 26, 2023, Petoskey City Council heard the first reading of a proposed ordinance to amend the City of Petoskey zoning map to rezone 1420 Standish Avenue to a planned unit development PUD. The City of Petoskey has in the past approved the rezoning of 4 parcels to planned unit developments: Crestview Commons, Little Traverse Commons, Petoskey Point, and 200 West Lake Street, where Mr. Wagner resides. All 4 occurred under the supervision of former city manager George Corteller. All 4 were the result of the Planning Commission's work, which included as a final step the site plan review as required under the City of Petoskey PUD ordinance. In every one of these prior PUDs, the Planning Commission's work, including the final site plan review, preceded the council's action of a rezone to create a PUD. It is critical to note that no rezoning of the property occurred until all conditions of the PUD ordinance, including all requirements, state, local, and federal, were met. This necessarily includes a full site plan review. Council can verify this information by a search of archival records or by contacting Mr. George Cortower, former city manager who still resides here in Petoskey. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You have in front of you the letter. Okay. Anyone else wish to speak to public? From the public? Why don't we go left to right? All right.
I'm Joe Baird, 923 State Street. I appreciate Ms. Marshall's comments. The city is fortunate to have a charter that clearly outlines and specifies how to go about rezoning in a PUD. And this project in the future could be critical and very important to the city. And for that reason, it's very important that we follow the guidelines set by the charter, do it correctly so that there are no problems in the future. So I'd encourage council, please follow the guidelines outlined in the charter. Let's do this and do it correctly. I also have a question. I noticed that council will be adjourning to closed session. My question is, will council reconvene after that closed session?
Because there's nothing on the agenda. That there will be no action taken after that closed session.
Thank you.
So,
Good evening. I'm August Matuzak. I live at 200 West Lake Street, Brian and John's neighbor in the condo development. Just had a couple of comments. Fairly new resident to Petoskey, lived in Alpena all my life and moved over here in 2020 on a part-time basis and then subsequently the year after a full-time basis. One thing that I noticed, Petoskey does a wonderful job of making this a warm and inviting and welcoming place, not only through the aesthetics, but also every service that I've encountered. The city does a great job of welcoming new folks, so I appreciate that. The one thing that has struck me since moving here, and I would ask council's consideration of this, is I am outdoors an awful lot, walking, playing golf, being in the community, being able to walk pretty much everywhere. And I noticed that a lot of heavy truck traffic through town utilizes what's called a Jake brake. I don't know if anyone's familiar with that or not, but that has struck me. In Alpena, we had that same issue and the city took action. And I would encourage you to look into that. It kind of is annoying to the point of frustration. And so I would ask that be something to consider. And
I did do research on that. And it is not lawful for a community to ban the use of J brakes in their town. It's not defendable. That's what I had read 2 years ago. It could have changed, but I know there were statements that municipalities cannot govern or authorize actions against that.
Okay, and I understand that if it's
I
not
will-
legal to do
What
that.
we could do is have our city manager. Public safety look into it.
And at the very least, if, you know, it seems to be a small number of contractors and large semis, you know, that are causing that. Maybe a conversation, you know, might help. I don't know. And then the second one is a less innocuous one. This is a very beautiful building here, and I've got a history and a background in landscaping and working. I don't know if the city has ever considered updating the landscaping at the front and around the sides of this building. You do such a great job with all of the parks and the public spaces in town with flowers and attractive landscaping. And the front of the building is pretty blah, you know, to put it bluntly. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak to council? There being none. We'll move on to the city manager's update. For that, I'm going to turn it over to city manager Shane Horn.
Thank you, Mayor. A few things to highlight. Wanted to highlight staff birthdays and work anniversaries for the month of July. Only one staff birthday, Jason Fate with Public Works, was July 3. And then a number of work anniversaries for the month of July. Mike Robbins highlights the list at 34 years. Mike Parker, Public Safety Lieutenant, 25 years. Rob Eichler, Electric Department, 23 years. Lisa Denoyer with Planning and Zoning, 19 years. Pat McGinnis, Electric, 11 years. Eric Kressel, Electric, 11 years. Robert Kibbe, Electric, 2 years, and Wyatt Putnam, Electric Department, also with 2 years in July. Few public meetings this week. Tomorrow we have the Downtown Management Board. They also will be doing a Downtown Development Board, which is required twice a year. So this is their second time doing a Downtown Development Board meeting as well. So there'll be some board reports, financial reports, nothing, really no new business per se, just going over reporting and then reporting out from the Downtown Development Board as well. Planning Commission follows that on Wednesday of this week on the 19th at 6 p.m. We will have a public hearing looking at a sign ordinance amendment. These are for projecting signs that would be facing Pennsylvania Park. And then we will have a site plan amendment for the Kilwins, which they are looking to combine 2 parcels for additional parking for their facility. Wanted to talk at some point with City Council about a few special meetings that I want to put on your radar. We really would like to have a kind of a dedicated work session for looking at the financial analysis, review, incentives, if you will, for the Maple Block Flats project. That's really a heavy of enough topic that I would like to devote a work session just to that. They're still working through their financials. They're not quite as solidified to proceed at this point, but we're hoping that over the next few weeks that we'll have that in place and maybe can schedule a dedicated time to work through that. I initially asked, because this is a 5 Monday month, July is from potentially the 31st. We had one conflict proposed. So this is an important enough topic that I would like to have the entire council available for. So it doesn't have to be a Monday, obviously. It could be later in that week, potentially. But if you could look at your calendars in the next few weeks and let me know maybe some potential dates that may work. And then we have been, as staff, been going through the capital improvement plan. You know, this is a planning document that I know each of you are aware of. We're at a point where we're compiling all the responses from staff. I would like to try to schedule a combined meeting with the Planning Commission to hear staff's presentation for their individual plan as well as the combined capital improvement plan. So everyone's hearing the same information at once. Typically, how I've tried to do these in past locations, and I know that's sometimes a difficult thing to take in, but I've tried to do this on a Saturday morning. But if that doesn't work, certainly we can do an evening meeting as well during the week. But typically we can work through this probably within, I would say, 2 to 4 hour time frame, depending on how many questions are proposed. But to be able to walk through the plan again with the planning commission so they can hear and provide any sort of feedback on the plan, I think would be valuable. That's some of the feedback I got from planning commission last year, that they thought that process would be well received. So potentially the first couple of weeks in August is what I'm looking for. And again, if we can do a Saturday morning, just knock it out on one Saturday morning. That's an option. If Saturdays are just our no-go, certainly we can do a night during the week as well. But two things to consider, I guess, just to put on your radar, a few upcoming special meetings that I'd like to try to schedule. I'm not sure that you can read this or not. I do have some handouts. If you want to take one and pass it down. Director Carr put together, I asked him to put together a kind of what we've been up to for our first few months with our code enforcement officer, what types of violations we've been seeing, what do our numbers look like. So you can see for the first 2 months in June and July, our biggest violation, as you can probably imagine, this is grass growing weather. So grass and noxious weed complaints have been our #1 violation. Miscellaneous, kind of a lot of things fall into that, any number of issues, but the big issue for us right now is weeds and grass. We are still getting a lot of on-street parking, whether it's boats, campers that may be staying on the street for too long. We're dealing with those property maintenance code issues as well. But total incidents over the first 2 months are 146. We've closed 138 of those. We still have when I was provided this earlier this week, we had 8 open incidents. 60% of these incidents were complaint driven, which means we received a complaint from someone driving by or a neighbor. And then we also spend a significant amount of time driving around the city in each of our wards. So 40% of the issues were initiated by our code enforcement officer. So we'll keep this tally kind of running going forward, and we'll keep that on your agendas so you can kind of see how we're doing from a code enforcement standpoint. Any questions on this or anything else that I've shared?
Shall we open our calendars now and start talking or something?
Certainly, yes, absolutely.
Since we're all but Derek are here. We could come up with some dates, maybe 1 or 2 dates for each, and that way Shane can check with Derek and we can go from there.
I'll start, Mayor. I'm fine with that Monday, July the 31st. If there's, I'll just put that out there for the Maple Block Flats financial review meeting.
I'll be on my way back from New York City. Sorry, I'm the odd woman out.
Again, it doesn't have to be necessarily a Monday. It's enough, and there's another time that week.
We move to the next day, to the 25th, Tuesday.
So
You
next
move it up, you're
Tuesday,
talking about?
Move it to, instead of the, did you mention the 31st?
I said the 31st, just Shane had mentioned that, but Monday, July the 24th would work for me as well.
We're gonna want to probably give the developer a little more
Yeah,
time.
that's what I was wondering. Okay.
How about
August the 1st.
August 1st, a Tuesday?
I'm okay, 1st, 2nd, and 4th.
We don't want to do a Friday night meeting.
That give the developer enough time for the financials, you think that following week, the week of Monday, July 31st?
Mac, oh, here he is. So I'm looking for Mac. Where's Mac?
Hard seat. Yes, I believe that's fine.
So we could do a 6 o'clock on Tuesday the first.
Okay,
Okay, if that, I'll, any backup dates for Derek in case that date is not good.
Next day, the second, okay?
mhm.
So you've got the first or the second.
Okay.
Okay. And the next part of it was going to be.
Capital improvement plan with the planning commission.
With the planning commission. That may take a little more work to put
Mhm.
together due to the planning commission having to weigh in on their schedule as well.
Yeah, so I wanted to bring this up at their meeting on Wednesday just to see where their schedules look like as well, but you know, if Saturdays were doable, you know, probably not that first Saturday, just because it's a fairly quick turnaround, but either like the 12th or the 19th.
I can't do the 19th.
I
Okay.
can't,
I can't do the 12.
Okay,
I can't do any Saturdays in August. My
Okay.
first Saturday is September 9.
Is that too long to wait?
yeah, that would be too long.
Can we propose to do it at a time of like when the planning commission meets? In lieu of whatever
Yes.
they've got going on or in advance of their meeting?
Maybe they have a lot going on right now.
Um,
In terms of a placeholder.
I mean, this is gonna be the hard one.
why don't I get their feedback, on Wednesday? If Saturdays are a no-go, then we'll figure out a Monday through Thursday. Obviously, we meet on the 7th for a regular meeting.
How about the 8th?
Is there anything,
Anybody have anything on the 8th?
or if you want to give?
Tuesday, the 8th?
Have anything on the
6
second?
o'clock.
I prefer a weekday meeting to a Saturday meeting anyway.
Right, how is Tuesday, the 8th of August? Why don't you try and float a date for us? Of Tuesday, August 8th. With them and see if that will work. And I guess if that doesn't have them come back with 2 dates, that would work.
How about the 9th or 10th that week as well?
That would be fine with me too. Wednesday.
The 8th or the
They
9th,
will
and
actually talk about it on the 16th, so they usually. At their meeting.
Yeah, so it would typically be on their agenda in August. On their regular agenda, which would be August 16. So if we could obviously do it before then.
meeting with them
Yeah,
on the 8th or the 9th.
so the 8th, what I'm hearing is either the 8th, 9th, and 10th are open possible. No, oh, I'm sorry. Okay,
8th and 9th, I can't do the 10th.
Okay, 8th or 9th, right?
or what about the 4th? Anything on the 14th
No.
in here?
Doesn't that seem kind of close to
14th
their
doesn't work.
meeting?
Yeah,
Oh, I do too.
Did you get an invite yet?
I didn't.
What did you
Maybe you're not.
Maybe I'm not invited.
The what?
It down. Neighbor.
Making too much noise.
Oh,
Too much noise, too much construction going on down there.
Okay,
We also, yeah,
let me see what those dates look like and I'll report back.
Shane, would you propose that this meeting could take like more than 2 hours? So did you want like an earlier start for staff and? Is that an option for people?
I don't know if it's an option to start much earlier than 6, probably. I mean, if we started at 6. We should be able to get out of here by 9.
Cause like a Saturday work session
Right,
sounds
because-
like a 3 hour block to me versus like a weekday, maybe you only have 2 hours and you have to work within the framework of when meetings normally are.
As long as we could do like a working dinner, like if we brought in sandwiches, we
Yes.
can eat and talk
Yeah.
at the same time, not with our mouth full, obviously.
Okay,
I can only be here 6 on those 2
Yeah,
days.
okay.
She can't be here but 6, so I guess.
Okay,
Leave it
then
at
6, okay.
And we'll do what we can do in
Yep.
3 hours.
All right, great.
Okay.
Thanks.
Any other things that you wish to ask? City manager regarding this, I think, Ms. Walker.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. In terms of the code enforcement officer totals, the miscellaneous category is like the second biggest. And so I'm wondering where, like, for example, short-term rental follow-ups would fall under this, the auspice of the enforcement.
Yeah, that would be under that. I'll see if we can kind of break that up a little bit, see if there's an opportunity for us to break that category up just a little bit, because you're right, it is
Pretty large.
it is a large number, and to just be under miscellaneous is
Yeah.
not real helpful.
That would be helpful for me to know a little bit more of that detail.
Yep.
It is a little disheartening to see that 59 was, and yard and overgrown grass was like the dominant thing, but I know that's part of the job and the job description, and I'm happy to see the follow through and the closed incidents. So.
Yeah.
The nice
Thanks.
thing is the grass went from 35 to 24, so it is going down.
Okay,
So after.
And I just
it was even growing in June, so it's like that big range.
just a reminder for, because some people don't understand that they are responsible, even though it's not their property, that right of way between the sidewalk and the curb, they're responsible for mowing and maintaining that. So we get some calls sometimes when we follow up, like they didn't think that was their responsibility.
Sure.
So,
Yeah, council, thanks for working on these plans.
yes, thank you. That was very helpful.
Does the public, I guess we'll just move right along. Next is old business, second reading, possible adoption of proposed ordinance. That would amend the city of Petoskey zoning map to rezone parcel 52-19-07-201-059 from R2 single family to I1 light industrial district. I'll turn it over to our city manager for discussion and possible motion.
Yeah, we have John Eichelangeli with us this evening. This is our second reading, so we brought this forward at the last meeting. Obviously, Planning Commission has moved this on, so this is on for second reading. If there's any questions or feedback for John, he is available to provide those answers if needed.
Any discussion? Yes, Mr. Moore.
So my question is for Matt, if I could. I'm wondering, with such a narrow change that's represented in 1, if the very broad statement in 2 is required or not.
No, it's not required. I've looked at some examples from other communities too, when they're making zoning map amendments, and this is kind of standard language we put in pretty much any ordinance, but in this scenario, we could very easily lose that paragraph and it wouldn't affect the rest of it, aside from, really making us probably have to do a first reading, since we'd be making a change to it. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Ms. Walker.
Thank you, Mayor. I did have a question just about this general vicinity of Clarion Avenue, the Bear River Valley. And really, we're talking about also in this same kind of rezoning district is the Michigan Maple Block property and this potential PUD development. So I guess I'm wondering if this area were rezoned as a mixed use development, would this person need to go forward and ask for a specific amendment to the zoning for their parcel? I guess I wonder about, it feels a little bit like this feels like asking for a variance. Almost like that you would go through, the zoning board of appeals. So I guess I'm just wondering, bigger picture of things, and as we move forward with looking to changing zoning to be more, maybe more mixed use development, converting old industrial to some abilities for housing, for example. I guess my question is would this then become necessary if this whole area was changed to like a more of a mixed use development?
Is this right that this is a small sliver?
Your Honor, members of council, John Michelangelo, planning consultant for the city. This is a very small piece of property. It's 0.13 acres. It's 5,600 square feet. And Mr. Hall has the property that's just adjacent to it, which is 0.63 acres in size. Actually, this parcel is a corner of his bigger parcel. And what he wants to do is to combine the two, and he wants the same zoning.
Sure.
The other buildings that are adjacent to it, there's a right of way, but it's unnamed. There's a couple other parcels there that are pole barns, and they have some light industrial or kind of warehousing operations in them at this point.
Yeah. I'm familiar with the zoning there, and it's a little bit choppy because there's some residential in this area. And then further down the road on the right-hand side, Nancy's Behan's home is one of the most recent Airbnbs because that area is zoned to allow that. I believe it might be B1 or B2 to allow an Airbnb in that area. So when I think about like bigger picture of the general vicinity and the opportunities that we might have in the future, I mean, I'm all about I am in favor of this gentleman being given allowing to rezone this specific parcel, but in terms of a bigger picture, as we move forward and we're thinking about different parts of the city, converting that area to like all mixed use, then eliminating all this patchwork kind of hodgepodge R1, R2, B1, B2, light industrial, and the very colorful map of Clarion Avenue. I guess I just wonder in the future if we would consider like a bigger blanket zoning so that people like Mr. Hall wouldn't have to apply for something like a variant in that context.
You could definitely do a mixed use district as long as the regulated uses are clearly defined.
Okay.
Okay, so you don't end up with kind of like a free for all. So even though you have a mixed use district, you have different types of mixed use districts. You have commercial, you can have industrial, you can have residential, you can have office, science, technology, mixed use districts. So it really depends on the type of district and the regulated uses.
Okay.
But it's something the PC could take a look at in the future.
This is merely pulling together what was shaved off at one point.
Exactly. It's really a housekeeping
It's
matter.
really a housekeeping.
Yes.
The neighboring buildings, lots right now have industrial
Correct.
warehouses in it. And unless you're gonna get rid of all these warehouses.
No, that's what I'm saying, like mixed use in my mind allows for industrial, it allows for residential, it allows for retail and commercial, and it kind of allows for a broader spectrum. But like you were saying, of course, those are determined what pieces of mixed use are available there. So that's why I'm just wondering if there would be a better way to kind of paint a broader stroke so that it would be more inclusive of all of these things, all the industrial that exists there, the residential. Yeah.
As we talked about at the last meeting, that when and I believe council person you brought it up, when the planning commission takes a look at redoing the zoning code, one of the first things we will take a look at is the consolidation of districts.
Excellent.
And as part of the consolidation, it kind of leans towards having mixed use districts to get rid of those.
Okay, I just wanted to articulate that in a public space. Thank you so much.
I will not forget this.
Thank you.
I just wanted that. Thank you for answering my question.
Council, anything else?
I think there's.
I have no problem with this.
You can speak after we get a motion and process.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I have no problem with the substance of this change, but it's such a narrow change. And then the second paragraph is saying all ordinances, resolutions, orders, or part thereof in conflict with the provision of this are to the extent of this as such conflict repealed. That's a very broad statement for such a small change. So I'd be happy to make the motion with that removed. I don't know.
I would like to ask the city attorney about that to get some clarification for the council. Could you clarify on the purpose for this small 3-line
Yeah, so again, paragraph 2 is really something we put in pretty much in one form or another, we have this type of language in every ordinance. Anything that pre-existed this ordinance that's inconsistent is repealed. And I believe that's the common law rule as well. Even if we didn't have that language, that would be the case. So in this scenario, I'm not too worried about it because again, we're talking about a very narrow change of rezoning from I2 to, I'm sorry, looking at the wrong one. We're just rezoning one parcel. So I'm not terribly concerned about that broad language in this scenario. I think it's something we could maybe leave out of future ordinances, but it's really, there wouldn't be much that is inconsistent with this ordinance. It'd just be the zoning designation of this particular parcel. So it's,
So you support it being left? Is that what you're saying?
yeah, it's up to council. Ultimately, I'm saying it's language you could take or leave.
That sounds a little wishy-washy.
That's a typical lawyer answer. I'm sorry, but
Okay.
it's accurate at least. I mean, you don't have to have the language in there again because there's a common law
If you
rule.
have it, fine. If you don't, fine too.
Yeah.
Okay,
And in this scenario, again, because the change is so narrow, it's
okay. So I have a motion from Ms. Demore
No.
for this, did you make a motion that you would, you said if it
If that
was
was
removed?
sorry.
Yeah, I said I would make a motion with it removed, but I don't know if others want to proceed
All right,
that
well,
way.
let's
So
see if we get a second first and then we'll go to
I
the
didn't-
discussion.
I didn't make a motion.
Well, I thought you did. All right. Does somebody want
He
to? make
said
a
she would be
motion?
happy to make a motion if it was removed, and
Uh-huh.
I don't have any legal background to say otherwise, Tina, so I would just defer to you.
Well, and if our council feels it's fine in there on this one because it's narrow enough, is that what you're saying?
yes.
Okay,
I would like the motion to begin with, whether it's with it in or with it out.
I'll make a motion to approve the rezoning as is.
Okay,
I'll second the
I have
motion,
a
Mayor.
motion from Mr. Wagner and a second from Ms. Walker. Any other discussion? I now go to the public. Is there anything that you wish to speak? I know, gentlemen, you wanted to speak.
Percentage.
Okay, very good. Anything else from the public? I go to Ms. Beck for roll.
Wagner,
Yes.
Walker.
Yes,
Demore,
Aye.
Murphy.
Yes. Motion passes 4-0. Next is the discussion and possible adoption of a proposed resolution authorizing the city manager to submit an Eagle brownfield loan for the former Michigan Maple Block property, and I turn it over to our city manager, Shane Horn.
Thank you, Mayor. So this continues a discussion that we carried forward from the last meeting. As you know, I was authorized to submit a Eagle Brownfield grant for $1 million for the Michigan Maple Block property project. Eagle has kind of left a window open for us to follow up with the loan piece that they're earmarking $1 million for a brownfield loan, which, as just for review, this is a 10-year loan for the first 5 years, zero principal, zero interest, 1.5% after that. So that the thought process would be that for now, we would potentially, you could authorize the city manager to submit the resolution that's in front of you along with the application. At this point, we're still not committed, if you will. Eagle will follow up with a contract agreement. We will continue to work on the implementation agreement to find to address any of your concerns or issues. That's certainly one option before you tonight, or we could essentially, decline the opportunities to submit the loan at this time. We could continue to, this essentially would close the window that Eagle has left open for us for this budget cycle, but we could resubmit down the road at a future budget cycle and potentially be considered, going forward if desired of the council. Or we could, based on your input, essentially drop it all together and just move forward with the grant. I did confirm with Eagle that if we do decline this opportunity, that it would not impact the $1 million grant award. This project scored very high from their standpoint, so that $1 million grant would remain on its own. So I just need to get some direction, give Eagle some direction. Because by tomorrow, they need to know how to proceed. Again, they've left this window open for us if we want to kind of use it. Or like I mentioned, the options, we could decline it for now and potentially look at it down the road, or, you know, not consider it at all. So obviously, we've got some bigger, you know, financial pieces that we need to kind of put the puzzle together. And so potentially, maybe we wait until all the financial issues kind of come together and we truly know what that need looks like. And then we potentially resubmit, you know, down the road. So a couple of different options to consider. I just need to be responsive to Eagle to give them that feedback, so they know to proceed, you know, with or without us.
I have a question. Somebody from the group here. Okay. Brad as well. Hi, Brad. There was discussion, I had a discussion with Jeff Smoke today. And he made a statement that he would be willing to utilize Great Lakes Capital. Could you give me your opinion on that? I know you're could you come to the mic? You could give us your full name and address so people get a clear.
Brad Toothaker, 1001 Linwood Lane, Petoskey. And I'm a founding principal of Great Lakes Capital, and we had a little discussion up front here, but we do many projects like this, and we're accustomed to backstopping, guaranteeing loans and these kinds of things in public-private process, and we're used to the capital stack being complicated. It is. We understand we're taking risk, and the city takes risk, and we've done probably a couple dozen of these in municipalities around this state and others. And so, yes, we're used to signing on for this because we believe the risk to be minimal in the project in total, but also with respect to this particular loan. And also, I think you've heard both from our consultant and yours as far as how things have processed in the last couple of decades with Eagle loans and grants like this, and the minimal risk that's involved. And a low interest loan is akin to it's cheaper money. It shrinks the capital stack and helps us get closer to the goal that we need to reach collectively with all the different pieces of the capital stack, the grants and offsets that we need to make this project happen.
So go on, as far as the Great Lakes Capital, as far as if not a bond, will you be signing on as Great Lakes Capital with this?
As far as guaranteeing it
for the $1 million?
Well, yes. It's often, I know this question came up in the conference call last week, but it's often that projects have a specific an SPE, a specific LLC for each entity. But Great Lakes Capital as an entity will guarantee with its full faith and confidence the loan.
Okay. I'm very happy with that. Yeah, so you would be here and would be making that public statement tonight. Thank you. Other questions, statements, Mr. Demore.
So given the importance of this undertaking, I've prepared a written statement for the record regarding my position, which I will share with you now. I appreciate you listening. Pending specific financials and other project details, including written specifics on the developer's workforce housing commitments, I hope to support the Maple Block Flats housing development moving forward. Having said that, at this point, and as the city manager just referenced, while the city has received proposed development numbers, no solidified financial proposal has been received from the developer, including, importantly, the total financial contribution or ask sought by the developer from the city. In support of the development, the city is considering providing various financial incentives to the developer, including tax abatements and the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy Department, or EGLE, grant submission that we approved at our last regular meeting, among other incentives. As part of its funding package, as has been explained, the developers also proposed the city apply for a $1 million loan from EGLE, which is what we are considering this evening. For context, a reminder that the entire 2023 budget for the city of Petoskey is approximately $34 million. Council members have been provided with a list of other Michigan cities who have undertaken EGLE loans. I don't know the amounts or the unique circumstances of each of those loans, but respectfully, the fact that other cities have taken these loans is not relevant to my decision-making on the specific facts before us here. Importantly, a key component of the EGLE loan is that it requires the city of Petoskey, not the developer, to be the signatory and guarantor of the loan. Let me repeat that for anybody listening. It requires the city of Petoskey, not the developer, to be the signatory and guarantor of the loan. In my opinion, solely mine, the city of Petoskey should not be in the business of a commercial lender. In support of the loan at a previous meeting, Mr. McClellan, who's here with us this evening representing the developer, stated on the record that the developer is well capitalized. If so, respectfully, the developer certainly should be able to access $1 million in funding on a $51+ million project via a loan from a commercial lender or another creative means of financing in lieu of a loan guaranteed by the city of Petoskey. While the interest, as mentioned, from the commercial lender would admittedly be higher than the favorable interest rate offered by EGLE, both our brownfield advisor, Ms. Susan Wenslick, and Mr. McClellan acknowledge that the interest paid by the developer is reimbursable to the developer for brownfield eligible activities. And as Ms. Wenslick indicated at our last regular meeting, the loan to the city must be paid back regardless of the success or failure of the development project. I certainly hope that the development project will be successful. However, it's important to note that a failure to make loan payments could result in withholding or clawback of state revenue sharing funds to the city. Given all the foregoing and as a fiduciary of public funds, I assess that the risk of the $1 million loan to the city outweighs potential benefits, particularly given other funding mechanisms available to a well-capitalized developer. Therefore, I will not vote to support moving the $1 million loan application forward this evening. Thank you for listening.
Mr.
Thank you, and thanks for that. I came in tonight wanting to hear how we're gonna mitigate the risk, not necessarily even working for guarantees, and somebody can clarify. I thought we just heard that if there was an issue with payment, that Great Lakes Capital would be covering that loan with the city. So I feel like that's a risk mitigation, as long as that can be done, that we're not really putting the city at risk. Is that true? I don't know who should answer that. That's Susan or.
Oh, she's on. So between Susan and myself, we have worked with the developer to try to work through any concerns. We're still working through the implementation agreement. I think we've got it at a point where it's fairly close. There's still some questions on the irrevocable line of credit, when or if that should be released during the length of the term of the loan. I think that one still is outstanding, but certainly we have time to work through this implementation agreement if that's the desire of council to move forward. Going with Great Lakes Capital was certainly some feedback that I received versus the Maple Block Flats LLC. So we have tried to always protect the interest of the city, make sure that if something unforeseen happens, that if we're not able to use the brownfield TIF funds, if it's not sufficient enough to make our loan payment, then that first person on the hook is the developer. They will make up that difference. So that there are some things that we've worked on, and certainly Susan can chime in as well. But it still remains a loan, and I certainly value and understand the concerns that have been expressed here this evening. It's one, I think anytime you have a development this large, you have to utilize maybe all the tools in your toolbox, and this is certainly a tool that the developer is not going to have access to. These opportunities are not passed on directly to the developer. They are through public entities such as the city. So I don't know, Susan, if you want to chime in and provide any additional background.
I think the only thing that I would add is that there is a way to secure the loan with the developer so that the developer is, as Shane said, on the hook in case payments are not, if the tax increment revenues don't cover payments. Right now, the development agreement that was provided in your packet does not provide that security. So I would say, you know, if the council decides that you want to approve the loan application tonight, it doesn't obligate you to do anything. This is not a contract. It's not, you know, you don't get a check in the mail tomorrow if you decide to submit the loan application. There is also really not much risk in putting it off and, you know, talking about it further and looking at the financials further. What I would recommend, though, is that you don't approve the development agreement tonight, because there are still a couple of sections I have some pretty serious concerns about.
Is it merely an application? Is it merely an application?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear what someone said.
This is merely an application.
Correct. I'm sorry,
The
Mr.
entire
Mayor.
process that will be negotiated following the application prior to ever being drawn. I know it is not like $1 million is put into your bank account.
Right.
The city would have to do a work plan that would forward the billing to Eagle for reimbursement through the loan. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the steps would be the application first. Eagle then, and the reason that Eagle needs it tomorrow is because they're trying to end their fiscal year, which ends the end of September. And so they need to get this money obligated and get a contract signed before the end of the fiscal year to obligate the money. So there would be, if you apply now, there is going to be pressure on you to sign the contract before the end of September, which you know, gives you a little bit of a, if you're anxious about timing and finances, know that there would be a decision point at the end of September if you decide to apply now. The next step, so it's application, contract, and then the actual money doesn't get released to the city until Eagle approves a work plan for the work that the loan will pay for. When I talked with Julie Lowe from Eagle today, Julie indicated that the grant work will be sort of front loaded in the project. So anything that the grant pays for, or you know, it's the first few things that the development project will need to have done. The environmental investigations, the due care planning, the due care, you know, the vapor intrusion mitigation systems. And then the loan would pay for something that's probably a couple of years down the road, which is the specialized foundations that the buildings will need in order, because it's unstable soils. So you know, if the developer is comfortable going forward with their project without having that loan secured, there's really not a rush to get it done if they're not going to use that money for a couple of years for something, you know, until they get a lot of other work done. Eagle will release the money when they approve a work plan for the specialized foundations. And that money goes into the city's account at that time. And at that point, you are obligated. You know, until you have that money in your account and it gets spent, the city is not on the hook for any kind of payment because you haven't used any money. So there is, you have quite a bit of cushion before you actually are really, really, really committed to the loan repayment. But again, I would really like to go back to the development agreement and make a couple more changes to it. Or at least have a conversation about it before you approve the development agreement.
Okay. Matt,
I just wanted to say a couple of things is that, I'm sorry, Matt McClellan, Brownfield Consulting, thank you. Just with respect to the project and what we have in the development agreement, there is an irrevocable letter of credit that the city can draw on its own. The only question has been, is there a chance to release that if there's enough brownfield TIF? So that payment measure is agreed to, in Great Lakes Capital's name, so a full guarantee. There's a contractual guarantee, there's a personal guarantee, and then there's a letter of credit that's agreed to. There's still a couple of technical things to kind of work through. And I agree with Susan, now's not the time for the development agreement. That comes when the contract comes. So it's been stated as an application. This puts us in the queue. If we can't agree, or if there's any issues with that at that time, a contract, you can turn that contract down and say thank you very much at that time. So just want to clarify that. Just one other clarity is that there will be some activities that are happening underneath that loan, sooner than a couple of years. So there is kind of an interest in moving forward at this point and allowing for that opportunity and possibility for work that would happen next spring or summer. So that then the loan cycle would not start until next year. So, but thank you very much.
Susan, you mentioned on the expiring line of credit. Could you speak to that for a second?
She's muted. Up to the right, yeah.
Thank you. So my concerns about the line of credit is that if it expires, I mean, the chances that the project would fail, that the stock, the market's going to crash again, yes, they're all remote chances, but they're not zero chances. And so my concern is that, something will happen, somebody gets hit by a bus, and the project for some reason doesn't happen. Or the tax increment revenues are not as high as expected, or whatever, something happens so that there's not, they could appeal their tax rates and there's not enough TIF. So I think there needs to be some more checks and balances in the contract that will protect the city. And really the only way that I know to do that is to keep the developer's line of credit committed all the way through the loan payments. I don't see any other way to protect the city other than keeping the developer engaged through the end of the loan payments. I would suggest that we could look at adjusting the development agreement annually so that as the loan payments are made and the loan balance goes down, then the letter of credit could be reduced as well. You don't need $1 million letter of credit when you've got $100,000 balance in year 9. Also, I would point out if the tax increment revenues come in at a larger amount than the loan payments, you can pay the loan off early. And that releases the letter of credit as soon as the loan is paid off. You can pay it off in 1 year if they come up with $1 million of taxes in the first year.
You catch that? And behind you.
I'll just say, I understand Susan's positions, we talked about it today, and we'll continue to discuss that and bring something back to the city that meets everyone's
That would be under
interest.
discussion, not if this
That's right.
application, that would be under the discussion of the
That's
implementation.
a contract. Yeah, contract.
Yeah, if I may, Mr. Mayor, it's kind of a no harm, no foul if you submit the loan application now, other than the message that it sends that, it sends the message that you are willing to play and to be at the table with the developers, which I think is a good message. This is a good project, as long as the understanding is that we're not done with the development agreement yet.
Okay, Brad, you had something you wanted to say?
it's created to the whole thing, but. I just wanted to mention that, to repeat that it's just an application. It is part of the capital stack. It does take some burden off the project during the early days of remediation and taking care of the environmental issue that comes along with the property. So, and we have plenty of time to either accept or reject, and there's definitely work to do relative to the development agreement. We're not there yet. And we understand the issues, and I think we know how to address the issues. And as well, the letter of credit, we understand the risk that's there, and there are certain metrics along the way, like coverage, as she mentioned, that once the balance is reduced on the loan, that we can remediate that, bring it down. So we're open to all that discussion. We're aware of the discussion, but thinking that just the application right now is probably, it's good for the project. It's good for us to really understand what our structure looks like in the beginning. We want to know as much as we can early on so that we can finalize the numbers. And I think over the course of the next, we have 75 days or so, I think, until the loan is processed, and then even more time until the funds are received and we're committed. So we're in partnership with this, and certainly appreciate and understand both consultants' remarks on this and your willingness to at least make applications so that we can continue the discussion and work toward closing the gap. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Moore.
So I know we technically aren't discussing the implementation agreement tonight, but we've drifted into that zone. So I'll just make 3 points on the record in follow-up to my colleague's comment about mitigation of risk. In addition, and again, I understand this is a work in progress, there's nothing in the proposed agreement committing the developer to workforce housing, percentages of workforce housing units, and or duration of units being so designated. So I would put that on the record as, for me, a matter of interest and concern. As an attorney, I'm not the municipal attorney, but when I read section 2.5, I assess that access to the proposed line of credit by the city still would leave us subject to potential litigation based on how it is drafted. And finally, I would reference section 2.6, the indemnification provision, which should be reviewed by our council along with these other points. Thank you.
Council, have you reviewed 2.6 section?
No, it was Jim Murray who reviewed the agreement. I haven't actually laid eyes on it yet. So if you guys want to discuss that at a subsequent meeting, we'll have Jim here to discuss it.
Okay,
Can I ask Susan a question?
sure, please.
Susan, I know you have experience in this world. So once we submit the application potentially, how long of a process is there for us to kind of button up? Once we get the contract agreement from Eagle and work on the development agreement, what type of time frame is that?
Well, once the application goes in, because as I indicated earlier, they're trying to button everything up by the end of September, you'll be asked to sign the contract for the loan and for the grant by the end of September. If you don't sign the contract, probably what they'll do is bump it over into the next fiscal year, which starts October 1st. And, once the agreements are signed, it will really be more dependent on the developers' timeframes rather than Eagles at that point, because the next step will be there will be like a kickoff meeting where we all get together and everybody finds out what their roles are. But after that, it's really on the developer and their team to start putting together work plans and asking Eagle for authorization to spend the money.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Ms. Walker, anything?
No, Mayor, I was feeling comfortable enough to move forward and make a motion to approve Shane to apply for the Eagle loan.
I'll support.
A motion from Ms. Walker, a second from Mr. Wagner. Other discussion, council, Mr. Moore.
Well, I just want to indicate that in the 4th paragraph of this resolution, it seems to state that the zoning ordinance has already approved the planning, the PUD. I mean, you can all look at that and see what you think. But that hasn't happened yet. Sorry, paragraph 4 on page 37.
Are you asking a question? Or making a statement? Like when you're.
I'm asking a question that appears to suggest that the PUD's already been approved, the rezoning. That's how I'm reading it. I don't know if others are, and I'm just calling it to the attention of council members to see if they're comfortable with that language or not.
Mr. Frost?
I'm sorry, what page did you say that was on? I'm trying to find it.
7.
I'm sorry, Matt, page 37,
Fourth page.
fourth paragraph of the resolution at the very end.
Oh, okay, all right. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I could read that language to say that, you know, not presuming that it's already happened, but to say that it will be consistent with the local development plans and the master plan and zoning ordinance with the approval of the PUD. So I think that could be read to say that's something that may happen in the future. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's happened already.
Mr. Moore? No comment? No. Mr. McCollum, you want to speak? Anything else on council? It's a public wish to address council at this matter. First name, last name, full address. There being none, I will go to Ms. Beck for roll.
Walker.
Yes.
Wagner.
Yes.
Demore.
Nay.
Murphy.
Yes. Moving on, new business, first reading of the proposed ordinance that would adopt the most recently adopted edit. Addition of the International Property Maintenance Code, the IPMC. And I turn it over to City Manager Shane Horn for information.
Thank you, Mayor. This is more of a housekeeping issue. We are still working under the 2009 edition of the International Property Maintenance Code. So this kind of gets us updated. Matt and Jim put forward a ordinance to kind of get us updated. If this is obviously a first reading, but we would obviously update our books, make sure that we're following the most current IPMC. There's not a lot of things that change from one version to another, but there have been obviously some changes since 2009. So we want to make sure that we're following the latest and greatest version. So this ordinance would kind of get us up to the latest version of IPMC.
Council, do I have any discussion, possible motion?
No, just a first reading.
Oh, first reading, moving right along. Any other questions, council, on this?
Yes,
Mr. Wagner.
I just wondered if it's possible to point out what has changed.
Yeah, I certainly wouldn't be the person to ask about that. That would be one of our whoever does building inspections, things like that. I couldn't tell you which changed, but I think the effort after sitting down with everyone is to get rid of, because as I understand the way it's laid out now is we basically in our code of ordinances kind of laid out as it existed, the standards in 2009, 2010. So rather than do that and keep updating that, we're just saying every time there's a new one that comes out, it's the most up-to-date version. That's the one we're using.
Okay. Thank you.
Be nice, okay. So you're saying there. What changes are you stating any changes or you?
No, I had never looked at the IPMC myself. The folks we met with the city manager, they would be the ones to ask about what's changed, but no, I couldn't tell you, give you examples of what's changed.
Yeah, we'd have to do a kind of a deep dive on it to see what the changes are. I really don't know off the top.
Okay. It's the first reading. Would you like something that would come back with some changes?
Yeah, essentially it's 5 versions old, so I'm sure there'll be a number of,
Yeah, maybe just a side by side of the previous one that we were utilizing, and then just, obviously, we have the one proposed changes, so that would be helpful, perhaps for the second reading.
I'll see if I can see if that's available or
Okay.
try to put it together.
We'll go way back to DOS.
I asked because that code comes up a lot. And
Of
so
course.
more curiosity. I'm sure I never read the old version.
I did. It's when it initially adopted it a few years back
Sure.
in 2009.
It's such a vital tool. I feel very comfortable with the fact that if it's like, this is like standard operating procedure for them to update it every decade or 5 years, and just utilize whatever newest version.
Mhm.
That absolutely.
And it may not be the best comparison, but it would point out too that our code of ordinances does something similar with the motor vehicle code. We don't have to go in every time the motor vehicle code changes. We just say we're adopting it by reference. That's sort of the goal here.
All right, so bring it up for second reading.
Thank you.
Next, the adoption of proposed resolution that would approve and implement section 3 policy to ensure compliance with federal law as it relates to the City Park Grill rental rehab project. Turn it over to City Manager Shane Horn.
Thank you, Mayor. So as you know, we are partnering with City Park Grill to provide for additional workforce affordable housing above their establishment. This will create 5 residential units. So they have been awarded about $530,000 in federal funds to pair with their private investment for this opportunity. So anytime you are able to take advantage of federal dollars, there's typically a lot of federal hoops to jump through and policies to update. So this section 3 policy is really for any sort of new hires that would have to be hired specifically for this project. This is such a small project. In talking with the contractor, they don't anticipate any new hires as a result of this particular project. But if they did, they would need to follow the section 3 policy as provided by CDBG and HUD, making sure that we're not, hiring out of area, out of state workers, maybe at a lower scale. But making sure that we're using local workers that are within a certain wage scale, and this is obviously the requirement, federal requirement. There'll be more policies that'll be in front of you as a result of this opportunity. But this is one of the things that we have to get in place before funds can start kind of flowing for that particular project.
Mr. Moore.
Yeah, my question is, since we have outsourced, so to speak, the administration of this project to Housing North, is it going to be the city or Housing North that's going to be in charge of assuring section 3 compliance, or maybe both? Thank you.
It actually won't be Housing North. That'll be I just lost the name of it. Yeah, but I'm trying to remember what is Northern Lakes Economic Alliance. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Correct. I stand corrected.
Yeah, no problem. They will be our certified grant administrator for this project. So they'll make sure that, all of our requirements are in place. I'll be working very closely with Jessica at NLEA as my contact, making sure that from an auditing standpoint, we're on top of all the requirements from the federal government. And this is certainly one of those that will be working closely with NLEA as our certified grant administrator.
So it'll be a joint effort between you
Yes,
and the.
yes,
Thank you.
thank you.
I'm happy to make the motion. So moved.
Support. I have a motion from Ms. Moore and a second from Mr. Wagner. Any other discussion, council? Does the public wish to weigh in on this one? There being none, I go to city clerk back for roll.
Lamore, aye. Wagner,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Murphy.
Yes. Next on new business, the last new business is a discussion on short-term rental regulations as it pertains to zoning licensing, application process and enforcement. I turn it over to city manager Shane Horn.
So as you know, at the last meeting, we did put forward a moratorium, 180 days. To allow us time to work through the good work that the planning commission has done to this point. I wasn't quite sure how quickly you wanted this back on your agenda, but if you wanted to take a breather or wait till we have a full complement of elected officials, that's certainly fine as well. Obviously, it's in front of you. John is here to assist in working through any sections. I don't know how, I really appreciate how John has kind of broken this up into numbered lines. I think that's helpful. So if you want to start working through it, walking through it, that's certainly fine. If you'd rather wait till Council Member Shields is joining us, that's certainly fine as well. I will be ready based on your input.
Mr. Moore.
I'd like to make a suggestion that we approach this maybe the way we did the beginning of the incentive policy, which we never got done with. But if we could have a couple work sessions where we knew in advance what sections we were going to address, so everybody could offer their input and questions ahead of time. And I think it would be very helpful to have city attorney with us there as well. That would be my thought.
Was this already reviewed by, who has reviewed this draft at this point?
So Matt's obviously taken a number of looks at this, that he's worked very closely with John to kind of put the ordinance that's in front of you, working with the subcommittee of planning commission members, and then the full planning commission has also gone through this. So both, I don't know if Jim's been involved in the short-term rental or just you, Matt, but not just, but so Matt and John both, as well as the subcommittee and the full planning commission.
And yourself?
Yes. So we can certainly devote, special work sessions to kind of dive into it if everybody wants to take, and I think I sent this to you in Word. If not, I can certainly do that. So you can kind of mark it up with suggestions, and then we can kind of get back together. And we have a number of items that, from a policy standpoint, this obviously our incentive policy as well. So there's a number of things that are percolating out there that we just need the time and the focus, I guess, for all of us to kind of dive in.
Well, do you counsel, do you have issues with, are there certain lines in here, certain sections that you have issues with? Do you feel we should go line by line? I look at it as we've had a city attorney look at this. We've had city manager, we've had the planning, our city planner. I'm wondering how much time we want to spend delving into this. Are there issues that you guys see that this has holes in them or stuff that go too far? Could any of you help me with that?
I'd be happy to help you with that.
Okay.
This is a policy matter that's in the purview of City Council. It came to us in February. Mr. Cross was here and our former planner was here, and we began this process of offering our input. I think our voices are critical on policy. And while I certainly respect the work of the Planning Commission, after the February meeting, this was completely removed from us and diverted to the Planning Commission. It's come back now. I have a number of questions. I have a number of matters that I would like to have addressed, and I certainly would like Mr. Cross to be there. And so, yeah, it's a policy matter, and I think we should take some time to look at it.
Okay,
Thank you.
council, the rest. Mr. Wagner,
I like the idea of having a full council present.
I do too.
I appreciate that there's a 6-month moratorium in place, and that gives us ample opportunity to review and discuss and get input.
Shall we look at doing a special session? But wait until after, give it a month or two, since there's a moratorium, we're already scheduling ourselves for extra days all the way through here. Put it on hold, come back in sometime in mid-September. I'm just making a suggestion of that,
Yep.
simply because the summer is short, it's already over half over.
I think if staff is fine with that timeline, Mayor, mid-September or October.
Okay. Right,
That's good with me as well.
Mr. Moore,
That's fine with me. Again, I think it'd be helpful for the session to be designating what it is we're going to look at.
Mhm.
You know, what portion, so everybody can be prepared to address that.
right. We take and chop it up into 3 pieces or something like this, or 2, or whatever it is. We can address that when we get closer to it.
We want to try to pick a date.
One thing to keep in mind, I don't want to kick this too far down the road. We're really going to be up against next year when the calendar flips. Right now, our licenses go through March 30th, right? Or the end of March. March 31. So as long as we don't do any sort of extensions, we should be fine as we proceed. But I'm a fan of taking little bites at this instead of maybe waiting too long and then oops, we got to really spend all this extra time. If maybe what we could do is, I do like the opportunity of having a dedicated discussion, but maybe an opportunity would be just to add, we're going to look at section 15.1 at our next meeting and just do little bites, and maybe there's nothing on there. 15.1 is pretty intended purpose, or maybe that's a big one. So we could do that, just add, this is on our agenda every meeting, and we just start methodically working through it. Unfortunately, then if you want our city attorney here, then that may add up, but
I also think it's difficult, depending what else is on the agenda, the degree of preparation required for other matters on the agenda.
Sure.
So my preference is that we do it in a dedicated meeting. That's my preference. I don't know about others.
I would like to wait until Derek is here so that all 5 of us can sit here together and not pick dates. He'll be here August. We can pick a time in September where we can start this. Maybe we can, is that good with you guys? Bring your calendars at the next city council meeting. We can take a look.
And also that we're working backwards from the date of when this would be, when the moratorium would end, knowing that there's an option for extending the moratorium, but in all good faith, like 6 months, and then working backwards from that date.
I would be shocked.
I don't think it's necessary, even I'm just saying, like, I know that that's an option out there, but
This stuff out and get
Yeah.
this stuff.
working backwards from the date and like knowing that by the last meeting in December, that come January, the moratorium ends, so that we're prepared.
Yep.
With
I
our,
would hope we'd have it done.
I would hope so too.
and I would just throw this out there as well. Obviously, being a redevelopment ready community, they love, and it's required that we have a joint meeting with planning commission. Sometimes those are not as productive just because there's so many voices, and sometimes you don't get the feedback that you'd want across the room, but certainly we could have a joint meeting with planning commission or even the subcommittee to kind of discuss their thought process as they put this forward.
We're already meeting on the capital improvement plan, so does that count? Do you get credits for that one?
Sure.
Star?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So.
Okay.
We'll take hand of that one. City council comments. What's that?
I would like that public comment on this issue,
On which issue?
Airbnb ordinance,
Short-term rentals.
short-term rentals. James Both,
We
901.
don't,
Oh.
normally, I don't take public comment unless there's a motion on an article, but stay there.
Okay,
We'll make exception, go.
okay.
Name and address.
Yeah, James Both, 901 Walker Zoo. With the 180 day moratorium on short-term rentals and adverse effects. I would just like to ask the following questions that get looked at during this review period. It's mentioned that short-term rentals have an adverse effect. Today, we even highlighted ordinance officer citations throughout the city. I'd like to know how many of those citations were written for short-term rentals, as well as were written for long-term rentals or private property owners. I would also look at the adverse effects over long term and see how many public safety complaints we've actually had for short-term rentals within the city limits. I think there's a common conception that short-term rentals are bad for Petoskey. However, I live in a neighborhood here where many residents leave for the winter time. Their houses are empty. No one is renting those houses and we're missing out on revenue during that time when people could be renting those houses to go skiing. We enjoy activities here. I think when you look at this, we need to look at the full picture and perspective of this and the 180-day moratorium. Really runs to a long time before next summer season or winter season when we could be bringing in revenue. Another topic I'd like to discuss, because it was discussed here while we were discussing development plans, is that Airbnbs or short-term rentals displace workforce housing. Has that actually been proven here? A question to ask. It seems like the issue is not workforce housing and Airbnbs and short-term rentals, but the cost of construction here, which is well above the national average. What we are looking at securing a loan for a developer with over $1 million of taxpayer money. I think we should ask ourselves our question, why do we not incentivize more private developers within the city to add more housing if we're going to give a developer that is well capitalized $1 million for a loan? Just a couple of things that I think we should look at for the short-term rental ordinance, as well as discuss these in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. City council comments, starting with Ms. Walker.
No comment. No comments, Mayor.
Mr. Wagner,
No comments, Mayor.
Mr. Moore,
So thank you to Councilperson Wagner and the Petoskey Sunrise Rotary, because this hasn't been said yet, for their efforts as organizers of our July 4th events, along with Petoskey Public Safety and all the other city staff who made the event such a success. Also, thank you to Becky Goodman, our downtown director, her whole team, for all of their efforts last weekend in connection with the success of Art in the Park, which is also a big undertaking that folks eagerly travel from afar to attend. Thank you to Councilperson Walker for her efforts in connection with Bliss Fest. She couldn't come to our special meeting because she was still too dirty for cleaning up. And I understand that was very well attended and a big success. That's all I have. Thank you.
thank you. I have no comments at this time. Next, council is going into a closed session, adoption of a proposed resolution that would authorize to adjourn to a closed session pursuant to section 8H of the Michigan Open Meetings Act to consider materials exempt from discussion or disclosure. Following this motion and vote, we will be going into closed session. We are merely coming back to adjourn. There will be no action taken by council after that closed session. Do I have a motion to go into closed session?
Mayor, I'll be happy to make a motion to move to closed session.
Support.
I have a motion from Ms. Walker, a second from Ms. Demore. Any other comments, council? I go to Ms. Beck for roll.
Walker. Yes. Demore.
Aye.
Wagner.
Yes.
Murphy.
Yes, motion passes 4-0.
I'm just gonna leave this alone.
It was really like raining. Oh, boy.
I don't know. I think I'm gonna open at home.
Nothing needs to be said, but it can be said, like.
No, it's returning.
There being no further business coming from this council, I call this meeting adjourned.
Thank you.